I never imagined that a completely ordinary Saturday at the shopping mall could be the pivot point that fractured my life and put it back together completely differently. One moment, I was standing behind the counter, grinding out another hour in my retail job, desperately trying to gather enough commission to just make ends meet. The next, I was suffering a public, agonizing humiliation in front of dozens of gawking strangers. But it was the chaos of that moment that paved the way for the unbelievable. A deep, steady voice I had never heard before cut through the silence and turned my entire carefully constructed, precarious world upside down. If you have ever felt utterly invisible, systematically overlooked, or been treated with the casual cruelty reserved for those deemed unimportant, then this story is proof that sometimes the universe is plotting grander, stranger plans than your limited imagination could ever allow. Stay with me until the very last word, because the ensuing twist will genuinely leave you speechless. My name is Elaine Marshall. Just 6 months ago, I was simply another forgettable face merging into the anonymity of the crowd. At 26, I was an employee at Elegant Trends, an exclusive, upscale boutique situated within the affluent Grandview shopping center. I was barely managing to survive on a meager combination of minimum retail wages and sporadic commission checks. My divorce had been finalized 3 months prior, leaving me in the harsh reality of starting over from scratch. Nothing but a tiny, overpriced apartment, a suffocating pile of residual marital debt, and the faint, almost painful hope that somehow, things had to improve. That particular Saturday morning began with the same relentless routine. I arrived at the store a full 30 minutes early, as was my habit, determined to ensure the environment was absolutely flawless. The mannequins had to be positioned artfully, the window displays perfectly conceptualized, every garment steamed smooth, and the high-end jewelry cases polished until they gleamed without a single smudge. Working in luxury retail was an unforgiving master. It taught you quickly that presentation wasn't just important, it was everything. Our clientele demanded a level of perfection that bordered on the absurd. I needed this job with an urgency that felt like a physical ache, and I refused to give management any justification to let me go. The mall was unusually congested that day. Families wandered through the wide, polished corridors, clusters of noisy teenagers commandeered the food court seating, and an endless procession of impeccably dressed shoppers drifted from one expensive storefront to the next, swinging their recognizable designer bags. From my assigned post near the cash wrap, I observed the steady human stream passing our entrance. Some paused to critically assess our window displays. Others walked by completely, their eyes focused straight ahead without a second glance. 3 years in this job had refined my judgment. I could read people almost instantly, distinguishing the serious, high-value buyer from the casual browser who was just killing time. It was around noon when she made her entrance. The woman appeared to be in her mid-50s, encased in a custom-tailored, cream-colored suit that looked impossibly expensive. Her blonde hair was styled with a severe, helmet-like precision, and the quilted handbag clutched tightly in her hand likely cost more than I earned in 3 months. She possessed that very specific, entitled look, the kind of rock-solid confidence born from a lifetime of never having to worry about money, never needing to discreetly check a bank account balance before making any purchase. "Excuse me," she announced, her voice a sharp, cutting demand that demanded immediate attention. "I require assistance immediately. I have a very important event this evening, and I need the perfect dress." I immediately deployed my practiced, professional smile and approached her. "Of course, ma'am. I'd be absolutely delighted to help you find something stunning. What kind of event are you attending?" She subjected me to a slow, deliberate inspection, her expression dripping with unconcealed disdain. "A corporate dinner. Very exclusive. I need something that makes an appropriate statement, but nothing too gauche or flashy. And it needs to be flawless because I will, naturally, be photographed." She paused, leveling her gaze at me, then added, "I assume you understand the importance of making the right impression?" The way she phrased the question made me feel instantly small and irrelevant, like she was challenging the very notion that a retail clerk like me could possibly grasp the complexities of her sophisticated world. But I maintained my fixed smile. "Absolutely. Let me show you some of our newest arrivals." We have some truly stunning pieces that would be perfect for a high-profile corporate event. I guided her toward our exclusive evening wear section, carefully pulling out several options. I showed her an elegant burgundy A-line number featuring subtle beading, a highly sophisticated gray dress with beautiful, architectural draping, and a vibrant royal blue cocktail dress that I knew would photograph brilliantly under any light. With each presentation, she examined the garment with the piercing intensity of a prosecutor inspecting a crucial piece of evidence. "This is far too plain," she declared, dismissing the luxurious gray dress with a lazy, flicking wave of her hand. "This color is completely wrong for my skin tone," she announced dismissively regarding the burgundy piece. "And this," she sneered, holding up the beautiful blue dress as if it were contaminated, "looks like something a secretary would choose to wear." I fought hard to suppress the rising tide of my frustration. In my years working on the retail floor, I had learned that certain customers were simply unappeasable. They entered the store already convinced that nothing would meet their impossible standards, and they felt justified in taking out their profound dissatisfaction on whichever unlucky sales associate happened to be assigned to them. "Allow me to show you just a few more options," I offered, striving to keep my tone perfectly even and professional. "We just received some magnificent pieces from our newest designer collection this morning." For the next exhaustive hour, I pulled dress after dress off the racks. Every single one was met with blistering criticism. Too long, too short, too formal, not formal enough, the wrong fabric, the wrong color, the wrong everything. Other potential customers drifted in and out of the boutique while I was forced to devote my entire attention to this one impossible woman. I could literally feel my potential commission slipping away as I ignored other buyers, but my training dictated I give this customer my complete focus until she left, bought, or demanded my manager. "Are you even listening to what I'm telling you?" she snapped, her patience clearly wearing thin, when I suggested a gorgeous emerald green dress. I specifically stated I don't want anything too flashy. "This is completely inappropriate." "I apologize," I said quickly, though I honestly wasn't sure what transgression I was apologizing for. "Allow me to try a different approach. Could you tell me more about the event itself? That might help me pinpoint exactly what you're looking for." She released a dramatic, suffering sigh, as if I had just asked her to explain the finer points of theoretical physics. "It's a corporate dinner for my husband's company. Very important people will be present. I need to look sophisticated, elegant, but not like I'm trying too hard. Is that honestly so difficult for you to understand?" I nodded, maintaining my composure, and returned to the racks, selecting a classic, timeless little red dress. It was beautifully tailored, simple, and utterly sophisticated, the type of garment that looked appropriate at any upscale function. "This is truly lovely," I said, presenting it to her. "It's one of our best sellers, and the cut is universally flattering." She snatched the dress from my hands, holding it up and examining it from every possible angle. For a brief, hopeful moment, I thought I might have finally succeeded, but then she shook her head decisively. "The fabric feels cheap," she declared, despite the fact that it was a premium, high-cost silk blend. "And red is so common. Don't you have anything remotely original?" By this time, a noticeable small crowd had begun to congregate outside our storefront. The mall was at its absolute busiest, packed with weekend shoppers. I could see the faces pressed against the glass, eyes focused on us, probably wondering if they should risk coming inside. But this woman had completely monopolized every ounce of my time and emotional energy. "Ma'am," I said, carefully trying to keep my voice a low, steady professional tone. "I have genuinely shown you almost every evening wear option we carry in your size. Perhaps if you could be slightly more specific about the style you envision, I could help you find precisely what you need." That was the exact instant everything irrevocably changed. Her perfectly made-up face flushed a violent, angry red. "Are you suggesting that I don't know what I want?" she demanded, her voice suddenly booming. "Are you, in fact, telling me that I am being difficult?" "No, not at all," I insisted quickly, recognizing the sudden, sharp danger of the moment. "I am truly only trying to help you find the perfect dress." "You're trying to help me?" She let out a short, harsh laugh that held zero amusement. You are merely a salesgirl in a mall store. What could someone like you possibly know about taste, style, or sophistication? Look at yourself. Look at what you are wearing right now. I instinctively glanced down at my required work uniform. A simple white silk blouse and a tailored gray skirt. Both pieces sourced from the store's own collection. It was professional, appropriate, and perfectly suitable for work. But the searing contempt in her eyes made me feel as though I were dressed in absolute rags. I'm deeply sorry if I have somehow upset you. I managed, frantically trying to de-escalate the situation. Perhaps one of my colleagues could assist you better. Oh, so now you're trying to pawn me off on someone else? This is precisely the kind of abysmal service I have come to expect from places like this. People were definitely watching now. I saw several curious faces pressed against our storefront window, and a few customers who had actually entered the store were pretending to browse the scarf display while clearly straining to hear our conversation. Ma'am, I truly am doing my best to help you, I said, my voice dropping to a strained whisper. If you could just tell me what specific feature or style you are looking for, I am confident we can find something perfect. She took a menacing step closer to me, raising her voice to an accusatory pitch. What I am looking for is competent service. What I am looking for is someone who knows what they are doing. What I am looking for is to be treated with the respect that someone of my standing demands and deserves. My cheeks were burning with the overwhelming heat of public embarrassment. The boutique was filling up, and every single person was now watching this arrogant woman systematically tear me apart in the open. I desperately wanted to lash out, to defend myself, but I knew that any reaction would only make things exponentially worse. I needed this job to pay my rent. I absolutely could not afford to lose it over a confrontation. I completely understand that you are frustrated, I said, attempting one final time to placate her. Please let me try again to help you. I want you to leave here satisfied and happy with your purchase. Happy? She practically shrieked the word. How can I possibly be happy when I have wasted over an hour of my extremely valuable time with an employee who clearly doesn't understand the first thing about basic customer service? Do you have any idea who I am? Do you know what kind of connections I possess? The thinly veiled threat was unmistakable. She was suggesting she could have me fired, or worse, cause serious trouble for the boutique's reputation. I felt the awful sting of tears welling up, but I blinked furiously, willing them back. I would not cry in front of this woman or this humiliating audience. I'm truly sorry, I repeated. Please allow me to call my manager for you. Your manager isn't here, she stated accurately. It's just you and your complete, utter incompetence. That's when, under immense pressure, I made a critical error. I tried to explain our store policy regarding returns and exchanges, thinking that the security of a 30-day guarantee might offer some reassurance. Are you suggesting that I would need to return something? She asked, her voice dropping to a dangerously quiet volume. Are you implying that I might not be satisfied with my purchase? No, I was just trying to reassure you that you were making assumptions about me. She interrupted savagely. You are treating me like some kind of difficult customer who is deliberately going to cause problems. I finally realized the absolute truth. There was no way to win this conversation. Nothing I could possibly say or do would satisfy her. She had chosen her anger, and she was determined to vent that rage and self-importance directly onto me, regardless of logic or my efforts. Ma'am, I said, trying one last, futile time to restore some semblance of peace. I sincerely apologize if I have done anything to upset you. That was never my intention. I was only trying to help you find something beautiful for your event tonight. She stared at me for a long, agonizing moment. Her eyes filled with a corrosive rage that seemed utterly disproportionate to the mild inconvenience she had suffered. Then, without a sound of warning, she raised her impeccably manicured hand and slapped me hard across the face. The sound resonated through the sudden, horrified silence of the store like the crack of a whip. Everyone froze. I stood there, completely stunned, my cheek burning with sudden, searing pain and overwhelming humiliation. I could feel dozens of eyes boring into me. I even saw a couple of people nervously raising their smartphones to record the scene. That is what happens when you show disrespect to people who matter, she said, her voice clear and carrying through the ringing silence. Maybe now you'll think twice before treating your betters so poorly. I wanted the floor to open up and swallow me whole. I wanted to bolt out of the store and run until I hit the state line. This was, without a doubt, the single most humiliating moment of my entire life, and it was playing out in front of a crowd of total strangers who would undoubtedly have the video clips uploaded to social media within the hour. I remained rooted to the spot, holding my hand to my throbbing cheek. I tasted blood. I must have bitten my tongue. The woman stood over me, looking deeply satisfied, as though she had just delivered a crucial, well-deserved lesson. The crowd remained hushed, waiting for the inevitable manager intervention or the explosion of tears. That's when I heard it. Touch my wife again, and find out exactly what happens next. The voice was deep, intrinsically authoritative, and perfectly, chillingly calm. It cut through the thick, tense silence like a perfectly honed blade. Every head in the boutique turned instantly toward the man who had spoken. He was tall, perhaps in his early 30s, with precise dark hair and clad in a dark suit that screamed bespoke tailoring and serious money. But it wasn't his expensive appearance that commanded attention. It was his overwhelming presence. He moved through the crowded store with the kind of effortless, singular confidence that caused people to physically step aside without consciously realizing they were doing it. "Excuse me?" the customer stammered, clearly confused and thrown off balance. "Your wife? I don't know what you're talking about." The man walked directly up to me, placing a strong, steady arm around my shaking shoulders. I was so utterly shocked that I couldn't utter a single word. I had never encountered this man in my entire life, yet he was publicly claiming I was his spouse. "You just assaulted my wife," he stated, his voice still calm, but possessing an unnerving edge of tempered steel. "I witnessed the entire thing. You struck her in front of all these people." "I don't know who you think you are," the woman retorted, trying to rally her dwindling authority. "But this girl is just a sales clerk. She was exceptionally rude to me, and I was simply—" "You were simply nothing," the man interrupted sharply. "You attacked a woman who was attempting to help you. You publicly humiliated her, and you did it because you calculated that she couldn't afford to defend herself." The entire atmosphere in the store had shifted completely. People were now whispering furiously to each other, and I distinctly heard one person near the counter say, "Wait, do you know who that is?" The aggressive woman, who had been so dominant moments before, looked uncertain for the first time since she had walked through the door. "I want you to leave," the man commanded. "Now, you can't tell me what to do," the woman insisted, but the confidence had noticeably drained from her voice, replaced by a slight tremor. "You don't own this store." The man allowed a slow smile to curve his lips, but it was not friendly. "Actually, I own several retail locations in this mall, and I can absolutely have you permanently banned from all of them. But more importantly, I can have you arrested immediately for assault." As if his words were a summoning spell, 2 mall security guards suddenly materialized at the store entrance. The man must have signaled them somehow, though I hadn't seen him make any discernible movement. "Is there a problem here?" one of the guards asked cautiously. "This woman just assaulted my wife," Alexander stated, his grip firm on my shoulder. "I would like her escorted immediately out of the mall premises." "That's utterly ridiculous," the woman protested, scrambling to reclaim control. "I barely touched her. She was being completely rude to me." "Ma'am," the security guard stepped forward. "We're going to need you to come with us." "Do you know who I am?" the woman demanded, pulling out her last resort. "My husband is extremely important in this city. You cannot treat me this way." "And do you know who I am?" the man beside me asked quietly, turning his gaze on her. For the first time, the woman truly scrutinized his face. I saw instant recognition dawn in her eyes, followed immediately by a profound, paralyzing fear. "Oh, God," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "You're Alexander Stone." Even I had heard that name before. Alexander Stone was whispered to be one of the country's wealthiest and most influential men. A tech billionaire who had built his vast fortune developing complex, essential software that everyone used but few truly understood. He maintained an exceptionally low profile, rarely appearing in media, but his holding company was valued in the billions. Now you know, he confirmed simply. And now you are going to leave. The woman frantically glanced around the store, undoubtedly hoping for some form of support or rescue. But everyone was staring at her with a mixture of horrified fascination and outright disgust. She had transitioned instantly from being the powerful, demanding customer to the pathetic figure everyone was judging. "This isn't over," she spat, but her voice was shaking uncontrollably. "I'll be filing a formal complaint about this store and its incompetent employees." "Please do," Alexander said mildly. "I'm quite certain my legal team would be extremely interested in discussing your behavior here today." The security guards swiftly escorted her out of the boutique, and the scattered crowd gradually began to disperse, buzzing with shock. But Alexander didn't remove his arm from around my shoulders. I was still utterly shell-shocked, struggling to mentally process the impossible sequence of events. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice now suddenly gentle, the steel receding. I managed a weak nod, although I knew that wasn't entirely true. My cheek still throbbed painfully, and I was trembling violently from the massive adrenaline crash. "Thank you," I whispered, lifting my gaze to meet his. "I don't know why you helped me, but thank you." He looked briefly around the store, which was slowly returning to a nervous, low hum of conversation. "Is there somewhere we can speak privately?" I led him to the cramped, utilitarian back area behind the counter, a small space usually reserved for supply boxes and employees' coats. It wasn't much, but it was safely shielded from the curious, lingering eyes of the few remaining customers. "I'm sorry," I started, feeling utterly lost. "I truly don't understand what just happened. Why did you tell everyone I was your wife?" He studied my face for a long moment, as though weighing a heavy decision. "Because I've been watching you for the past hour, and I was deeply impressed by how you handled yourself. You maintained your professionalism, your patience, and your kindness. Even when that woman was treating you with complete contempt, you did not break. You didn't deserve what happened to you. But why did you lie? Why didn't you just tell her to stop?" "Because people like her do not listen to simple reason," he explained, folding his arms. "They only understand the language of power. And claiming you as my wife was the quickest, most absolute way to make her comprehend that she had just made a very serious mistake." I was quiet for a moment, letting the complexity of his logic sink in. "You mentioned you own stores in this mall?" He nodded easily. "I own several businesses, yes, including a few retail locations, but that's inconsequential right now. What is important is that you should not have to work in an environment where entitled customers believe they have the right to physically abuse you." "It's not usually like this," I rushed to assure him. "Most of our customers are perfectly lovely. That woman was just difficult." "Difficult?" he repeated, his expression hardening slightly. "She assaulted you. That is not difficult, Elaine. That is criminal." I tentatively touched my cheek again, which was still radiating heat and soreness. "I need this job," I confessed honestly. "I can't afford to make any trouble or draw attention." "What is your full name?" he asked. "Elaine Marshall." "Well, Elaine Marshall, I have a somewhat unusual proposition for you. But first, let me ask you something completely straightforward. Are you happy working here?" The unexpected nature of the question caught me entirely off guard. "Happy? I don't know. I am grateful to have the work. I desperately need the money. That is not what I asked. Are you happy?" I considered the question with painful honesty, looking at the scarred wall behind him. "No," I admitted softly. "I'm not happy. I'm surviving, yes, but I am not happy. I want to go back to university, maybe study business administration or marketing, but I absolutely cannot afford it right now." He nodded slowly, as if this confirmed a theory he had already developed. "I have a strange offer for you. It's going to sound entirely unbelievable, but I need you to hear me out without interruption." "Okay," I said, utterly bewildered about the direction this conversation had taken. "I need a wife," he stated simply. I stared at him, sure I had misheard. "I'm sorry. What?" "I need a wife. For purely business reasons. My grandfather, when he passed, left me his company, Stone Tech. But there is a stringent clause in his highly eccentric will that stipulates I must be legally married by my 32nd birthday. If I fail to meet that deadline, the entire inheritance, including the majority stake in the company, goes directly to a string of charities. I turned 32 in exactly 6 months. That's insane, I managed to say. Why on earth would he do that? Because he firmly believed that a man needed a dedicated family to keep him emotionally grounded. He thought that without a wife, I would become too singularly focused on work and inevitably forget about the important human things in life. But surely you could find someone, I argued, confused. You're successful. You're clearly attractive. You must know dozens of women who would be interested. I've tried, he confirmed, a flicker of genuine weariness in his eyes. But every single woman I have encountered in the past year has been dramatically more interested in the size of my balance sheet than in me as a person. They view me as a massive prize to be won, not a human being to be loved. And frankly, I don't have the luxury of time for the kind of prolonged courtship that might eventually lead to real love. So you want a fake marriage, a calculated business arrangement. Precisely, he affirmed. 1 year of marriage in name only. After that, we divorce quietly, and you walk away with a guaranteed settlement large enough to completely pay off your debts, fund your entire education, and start whatever kind of life you truly desire. I couldn't process the scale of what he was proposing. This is genuinely insane. You don't even know my last name. I know enough, he countered firmly. I know that you are honest, that you are hardworking, and that you possess a rare core of decency. I know that you treated that absolutely atrocious woman with far more respect than she ever deserved. I know you are not the type of person who would try to take advantage of someone. But marriage, that's a tremendous step. It would be a marriage strictly in name only, he reiterated. You would have your own bedroom, your own private space. We would appear together at the mandatory public and corporate events, but otherwise you would be completely free to live your life however you choose. And by the end of the year, your financial worries would vanish. You could do absolutely anything. How much money exactly? I stammered, hating the desperate tremor in my voice the second the words left my mouth. $5 million, he stated, his tone utterly matter-of-fact. I involuntarily sank onto the nearest available surface, a wobbly stack of inventory boxes in the aisle. 5 million. The number echoed in the cramped space, a sum so vast it felt fictional. It wasn't just enough to settle the crushing weight of my consumer and student debts. It was enough to finally enroll in college, purchase a modest home, and secure a cushion that would last me decades. It was complete, unqualified freedom. But why me? I whispered, utterly bewildered. Why wouldn't you hire an actual actress or a professional model? Someone who could actually sell the role of your devoted wife. Because actresses and models are looking for a platform. They crave media attention and would try to parlay our arrangement into a genuine career launchpad. They create complications. You, Elaine, are different. You simply want to build a stable, decent life for yourself. That singular focus, that hunger for stability, is something I understand completely. And I respect it. Silence stretched between us, thick with the weight of the impossible decision. My mind spun, racing through the insanity of his proposition. It was lunacy, a plot ripped straight from a bad movie. Yet, simultaneously, it was a precise, surgical solution to every single anxiety-ridden, stress-inducing financial disaster I'd been facing since my divorce. 12 months of feigned affection and public appearances with a man whose name I barely knew, and I would achieve permanent financial liberation. What, specifically, would be required of me? I finally asked. Your duties would be minimal, he assured me, accompanying me to maybe a dozen significant social or charity events throughout the year, smiling convincingly for the photographers, maintaining the illusion that we are a blissfully committed couple. That is essentially the totality of the job. I searched his face, desperate for confirmation. And you wouldn't expect anything else? Nothing else, Elaine. I state this firmly. This is a cold, calculated business transaction. I am not seeking emotional attachment, romance, or companionship. I am solely looking for a clean, legal resolution to a very specific corporate issue. I need some time to process this incredibly overwhelming proposal, I managed. Of course, he replied gently. Take all the time you require. But understand, Elaine, I am entirely earnest in this offer. I genuinely believe this arrangement can be mutually beneficial. I studied him. This impossibly handsome, strangely intense man who had materialized like an angel of vengeance during the most humiliating moment of my existence. May I ask you one more question? Certainly. Would you truly have had that woman arrested? He allowed himself a brief, genuine smile, the warmth finally reaching his steely blue eyes. Absolutely. No person, regardless of their supposed status, has the right to treat another human being with such calculated cruelty. I felt the need to apologize for my own low standing. Even though I'm just a store clerk. He cut me off sharply. You are not just anything, he asserted, his voice regaining its firm edge. You are a human being who warrants basic, fundamental respect. And anyone who fails to recognize that fact is beneath contempt. A painful lump formed in my throat, and I felt the unwelcome sting of tears starting up again. Yet, these weren't the burning tears of shame or defeat. They were tears of profound, shocking gratitude. For the first time since my whole world imploded, someone treated me not as a liability or an inconvenience, but as a person who possessed inherent worth. I will seriously consider your proposition, I promised. How do I contact you? He smoothly extracted a thick, matte black business card from the inner pocket of his suit jacket. It was heavy, engraved only with the name Alexander Stone and a private direct line. My personal number is on here. Please call me the moment you've reached a decision. And what if I decline? Then I will honor your choice and proceed to locate an alternative solution for my dilemma. But I sincerely hope you agree, Elaine. I truly believe this opportunity could pave the way for something transformative for both of us. After Alexander Stone vanished, as swiftly and silently as he had arrived, I finished my remaining hours in a surreal, dreamlike daze. The ordinary customers who approached my register seemed unreal. Their polite smiles and basic human decency felt like actors playing roles, a stark and impossible contrast to the violence I had just endured. I kept touching my cheek, half expecting the confrontation to have been a feverish nightmare. When my shift finally ended, I made the agonizing commute back to my small, threadbare apartment. Sitting on the chipped kitchen table in the quiet darkness, I focused on Stone's proposition. It was fundamentally insane, utterly impractical, and defied every principle of caution I knew. It reeked of being too good to be true. But then again, it was an undeniable, singular opportunity, the kind that might never present itself again. I thought about my ex-husband, Mark, whose calculated betrayal had left me stranded, drowning in a sea of his hidden liabilities and the wreckage of my shattered future. I thought about this retail job, where I plastered on a cheerful, robotic smile for 8 hours a day, meticulously masking the panic and exhaustion while the debts tightened like a noose around my neck. And then I remembered my mother, who had passed 3 years prior. Her voice, gentle but firm, echoed in my memory. Opportunities, Elaine, rarely knock politely. They usually arrive in disguise, and they only come to those brave enough to seize them. The following morning, before the sun was fully up, I retrieved the black card. My fingers trembled slightly as I dialed Alexander Stone's direct line. He answered on the first ring, his voice crisp and professional. I've made my decision, I stated, trying to keep my own voice steady. I accept the offer. I'll do it. Are you absolutely certain? He pressed, his tone turning serious. Understand, Elaine. Once we initiate this legal process, the change is irrevocable. There is no simple retreat. I'm sure, I replied, and the realization hit me. For the first time in a very long time, I genuinely felt certain of my path. Then, welcome to your new life, Mrs. Stone, he declared, and the unmistakable sound of a triumphant smile was audible in his deep voice. Hanging up the receiver, a profound, almost absurd realization washed over me. The cruel woman who had assaulted me had inadvertently done me the greatest favor of my life. Her petty malice and humiliation had served as the bizarre catalyst that brought Alexander Stone and his impossible offer crashing into my existence. handing me a golden ticket to a future I couldn't have dared to dream of. It is true, I mused, that our darkest, most desperate moments often conceal the unexpected doorways leading to our greatest fortunes. I often wondered what fate befell that hateful customer, hoping that the shock of almost being arrested taught her a vital lesson. Kindness and basic respect are not merely moral imperatives. They are practical necessities. You simply cannot know whose eyes are watching, or when your callous actions might rebound to either haunt or help you. For me, the lesson was clear. Salvation can emerge from the most unforeseen corners. A complete stranger stepped into my chaos and altered the trajectory of my life forever. Sometimes, the universe meticulously plots a path for you far grander than your imagination could ever conceive. Elaine's journey is a powerful testament to the fact that we can never truly predict what lies just beyond the next challenge. The rock bottom of our experience can, astonishingly, become the foundation for extraordinary opportunities. If this unforgettable story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more incredible true accounts. And always remember, even when the world feels smallest and coldest, you are never quite as isolated as your fear tells you.